Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste friends. Team Param Vedanta welcomes you all to DISHA 47, a new series of an inward journey to discover our inner strength and happiness through the Bhagavad Gita. Let us continue with the study of chapter 10, Vibhuti Yoga. Dr. Rekha Kumar is going to help us understand verses 12 to 18 of this important chapter. She will also touch upon the topic of the principle of God as explained in the Tattva Bodha. After the talk, we will have a teaching quiz by Dr. Vasumati. Now, before Dr. Hegde sir gives us the introduction to the day's topic, I have the privilege of presenting today's prayer verse. All of us are learning in the Bhagavad Gita that we are of the nature of the Atma, the pure, eternal, all-pervading consciousness. But given the fact that we now have a human birth and we have to lead a life amidst the world and all its suffering, what are the qualities that will help us best lead this life? To know these qualities, let us look at this verse where we contemplate on the virtues of Lord Hanuman. Buddhir balam yasho dhairyam nirbhayatvam arogatam ajadyam vakpatutvam cha hanumat smaranat bhavet. Next slide, sir. Let us see each word. Buddhi is intelligence, to be objective. Now we know that Buddhi is one step above the manaha, the mind. The mind is subject to a lot of fluctuations, but Buddhi has the rational thinking power. So let us be blessed with the Buddhi to understand and be objective in every situation. Balam, strength in both body and mind. Yashas, victory. Victory here is not is not just being a winner and then somebody else being a loser, but rather in creating win-win situations for everyone around us. Dhairyam, courage to do the right action all the time. Next slide, sir. Nirbhayatvam is fearlessness to face any worldly situation. Arogatam is to be free from disease. It's only if we have a healthy body can we function to the best of our abilities and also pursue our study of the scriptures. Ajadyam is free from laziness, to be active, to always be energetic, and to do karma yoga. Vakpatutvam is skillfulness in speech, to communicate effectively. Lord Hanuman was known to be one of the best communicators in all our scriptures. In fact, when he returned from Lanka the first time and Rama was waiting to learn about how Sita was, Hanuman started his sentence with Channagidale Sita. I'm not sure of the Sanskrit word, but he said she is fine and then told her name. Because if he had told Sita first, then for a microsecond there would have been doubt in Rama's mind whether Sita was all right or not. Next slide, sir. So to possess all these qualities, Hanumat Smaranat Bhavet. All of the above becomes one's own traits of character from the contemplation on Lord Hanuman. This verse contains in a nutshell all the physical and mental qualities we need to lead a full life on this earth. Lord Hanuman personifies the absolute strength derived from complete Nishkama Bhakti. Thank you, Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Panaga, for introducing another beautiful prayer. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Once Swami Vivekananda asked Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, have you seen God? Sri Ramakrishna's reply was, I can see God as clearly as I can see you. Why does a student ask a teacher if you have seen God? Because you want to be sure that through your teacher, that you will also be able to get the same grace that your teacher has. Gautama Buddha had said, even if one person can attain, it is the potential for all of us. It is our birthright. As Bal Gangadhar Tilak had said, Swaraj is my birthright and I will have it. This grace of being able to see God is something that I will be able to attain. Is there a path through which we can attain? Certainly. And the path is through the path of bhakti. And the path of bhakti evolves from Ekarupa, Vishwarupa, and to the most difficult, Arupa Bhakti. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was an example of the highest form of a bhakta, both as Ekarupa, Vishwarupa, and Arupa. Let us begin with where we are. Sri Krishna, the 7th chapter, has said there are 4 levels of bhakti in the same person, depending upon one's spiritual evolution. Initially, all of us are Artha Bhaktas. That means we think of God at the time of difficulty, we approach God and seek God's help to seek us through our difficult moments. Later, we see that the God can be a means to help us to get various worldly goals. Such a Bhakta is level 2, called Artharthi. A significant jump in the evolution comes when a person now becomes a Jignasu. A Jignasu is one who is seeking God. God no longer is the means to achieve worldly things. God has now become the goal. And once you want to know about God, that is when a person seeks a teacher, seeks a guru who has seen God, who has known God. And this level of a student has been very nicely described in the Mundakopanishad. That's Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan Brahmana. So he goes to a guru. Tad Vijnartam sa gurumeva abhigachet. What kind of a guru? A Shrotriya Brahmanishta. A person who is not one who has seen God, but one who is become one with God and has also the ability to communicate. Very fortunately, we have such teachers with us, and because it is of the grace of these teachers, we are able to have a very refined understanding of God and what is godliness. Whenever we approach a teacher with this curiosity, I want to know about God, I want to see God, the teacher is now very certain to know whether we have a certain eligibility. A teacher, before he will put you in through certain spiritual exercises, would like to make one test. And if there is one qualification that the teacher is really looking for is, do you have that tivra mumukshutvam in you? Is that burning desire, I want it, and I'm ready to give whatever is required to be able to see God, to be able to know God. Once the teacher is convinced that you are a qualified student, then the teacher gives you a sequential level of exercises that we have all studied, we have all been through, and that is the process of Karma Yoga. As all of us are very busy people, the teacher says, whatever work you do, can that become a yoga? Can that become as an offering to God? And learn to accept whatever that comes as a remuneration for your work as prasada. After a few years of Karma Yoga, the student is now receptive for the next level that is called Upasana Yoga. For busy people, it looks like a waste of time. When the teacher will give you a japamala and says, spend a long time uttering a mantra based on the form of God that you love. It could be Rama, The mantra would be Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. If Shri Krishna is your Ishta Devata, the teacher might give Om Shri Krishnaya Namaha. If Lord Shiva is your Ishta Devata, it may be Om Namah Shivaya. This simple but very powerful mantras need to be meditated upon for a very long time so that our mind is available for us for as long as we want. And such a refined mind has got what is called a jnana yogyata. And only when a person has got jnana yogyata, then the teacher can come to a more refined level of understanding from the tradition of Sadashiva. Fortunately, our teachers are able to express in words that we can understand. The teachers not only give us Shruti, but they give it through Yukti and Anubhuti. That means once we have a certain yogyata, that means we have an eligibility for spiritual knowledge, the teachers now will give you a logical approach. That means whatever the teacher says should appeal to logic. It should not be against logic. It should be part of experience. And the teachers follow very much the pattern how Sri Krishna handled Arjuna when he was in the battlefield, absolutely broken down, not able to perform. When he says, Na jayate briyate va, there is, instead of speaking about God, instead of speaking about knowing God or seeing God, Sri Krishna now comes and tells you about our true nature. You are never born. You're not going to die. You have been there from the very beginning, if there is a beginning. So the teachers now tell us about our true nature and try to get you to know yourself. After some time, the teacher will give you certain exercises, and these are called prakriyas. And these prakriyas, and among all these prakriyas, there is one extremely powerful prakriya, and this is called the Drik Drishya Viveka. What is Drik Drishya Viveka? The teacher will help us to know our true nature by saying, whatever you can experience with your sense organs or your mind is not your true self. That means this whole world of experiences, my body, including my mind, which I can see, my thoughts are not me. That means whatever I can see and experience is of a lower order of reality, and the teacher will tell you whatever I can see is mithya or of a lower order, and the one that is the observer is the real truth or drik. How can I see any of these objects? For one reason, it has some attribute or the other. If there are no attributes, I will not be able to experience. And therefore, by deduction, you will know the true self has no attributes. Everything else can be objectified. The true nature can never be an object of my experience. My true nature is called aprameya. Anything that can be seen in experience is called prameya. My true nature is aprameya. And the more you realize I have no attributes in time, that means I am there from the very beginning, I'm there till the very end, I'm limitless as far as time is concerned, I'm limitless as far as space is concerned. You understand your true nature is anantatvam. I am limitless. And whenever we know our limitlessness, we experience ananda. I also know I am. So my true nature now becomes Sat Chit Ananda or Sat Chit Ananta, which is also the true nature of God. And once through Shravanam, when the teacher has given you this idea, this becomes mind-boggling. It becomes difficult to understand. The student has very genuine doubts. Then we go through a process of Mananam. And through Mananam, the teacher clarifies our true nature is not different from that of God. And once I know I am Nityaha, Shuddhaha, Buddhaha, Muktaha, then Tad Katanam, Anyon Tad Prabodhanam, all my activities are none other than Nidityasanam. I go into a process of meditation. And this goes on for years. Even this process of meditation, see, till Shravanam and Mananam, the Guru is with you. When we come to Nidityasanam, that is where we are by ourselves. And that is again where grace is needed. That is where again we need to be a bhakta, because it is bhakti which has brought us to the Guru, and it is bhakti that will take us from a state of God is nowhere to an understanding that God is now here. What do you mean by God is now here? God is something like space. We are not going to talk of God as a person, as an object. Now you understand something called godliness, something like space, something that permeates in and through, and yet it is beyond. That is what we call as immanent and transcendental. Now these words of the scriptures, my sarvam idam protam sutre manigana eva. My true nature pervades in and through everything, like that hidden string which is holding everything together. Slowly and slowly, as Nidityasanam becomes more clear, then you understand there is not one God, but God only. And this is a sense of awe, amazing wonderment and devotion when the student understands what is called this Mahabhakya, Sarvam Kaluvidam Brahma. Now, when you are in this level of understanding, if somebody comes and asks you this question, have you seen God? Do you know God? How would you answer such a question? For example, if your name is Anand, and somebody says Anand, and somebody does not know that you are Anand, but comes and asks you, have you seen Anand? Or do you know Anand? Can you see the difficulty? Because Anand is not somebody that you can see. Anand is not somebody whom you know, because I am Atma Brahma. At least one thing you can say for certain. Any experience, however delightful or wonderful, even an experience of the presence of God in your dreams, or that is called pratibhasika, or in the so-called vyavaharika, if I'm able to have a divine godly experience, anything that comes and goes in meditation or in my real life, Gaudapadacharya warns, these are called obstacles to meditation. It is called rasasvada. What our teachers can impart is to understand our true nature as I am Atma Brahma. That is where bhakti, or the path of bhakti, is so important. So from Ekarupa, the stepping stone is Vishwarupa. And the stepping stone to Vishwarupa is Vibhuti, to be able to see God in and through wonderful objects in the world. And it is this that Dr. Rekha will help us to understand in the study of DISHA today. Dr. Rekha, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In chapter 10, next slide, the presentation is that the Lord manifests as this universe. Previous slide, please. The whole universe is nothing but the Lord himself. Seeing all the Vibhuti as God's Vibhuti is Vibhuti Darshanam. The greatest benefit of this is that one becomes humble when we see our glory as the glory of the Lord. When we see the glory of another person, that is also the glory of the Lord. So one doesn't become jealous. A Vishwarupa Bhakta sees the Vishwarupa of God everywhere. Seeing the glory of the Lord every time is the transformation which the Lord wants in us. Since Sarvatra Vibhuti Darshanam is the topic, this chapter is called Vibhuti Darshanam. Next slide, please. In chapter 10, in verses 1 to 3, Krishna introduces the glories of Ishvara. And in verses 4 to 11, he presented the subject matter briefly. Next slide, please. In verses 4 and 5, Lord Krishna said that the Antara Prapancha of thoughts arose from him, and he mentions around 20 thoughts. Buddhihi, intelligence; Gnanam, wisdom; Asamoha, clarity of thinking; Kshama, patience; Satyam, truth; Damaha, sense control; Samaha, mind control; Sukham, happiness; Dukkham, sorrow; Bhavaha and Abhavaha, origin and resolution of thoughts; Bhayam, fear; Abhayam, fearlessness. Ahimsa, non-violence. Samata, equanimity. Tushtihi, contentment. Tapaha, austerity. Danam, charity. Yashaha, fame, and ayashaha, ill fame. So all these are examples of thoughts, and Krishna says all these thoughts are born of me alone, and therefore I am the cause of the inner world of thoughts. In the next slide, we see that Krishna goes on to say that he is the cause of the external world also. And because he is the cause of both internal and external worlds, he is the cause of everything. In verse 6, he says the Bahya Prapancha, the external world of beings, arises from me. And in verse 7, he tells us the benefit of knowing Vishwarupa Ishvara Swarupa, and that is, one will be blessed with the unshakable knowledge of Arupa Ishvara. So the topic in verses 4 to 7, which has been already covered, is Ishvara Swarupa, where the Lord is shown to be both the intelligent and the material cause of the universe. Next slide, please. In verses 8 to 11, Krishna talks about Aneka Rupa Ishvara Bhakti or Virat Bhakti, and about its benefit, which is really glorious, which is Brahma Jnanam, which will lead to moksha. So this is a stepping stone between the lowest level, in which the Lord has only one form, as we all know, Ishta Devata Swarupa, and the highest level where God does not have any form, Arupa Ishvara. And Krishna points out that God alone has manifested in the form of the entire universe, because both God and universe are mixtures of consciousness plus matter. Lord Krishna says, both worlds are born out of me alone, which means to see God, one does not have to look in any special direction, because God is everywhere. One just has to open one's eyes. So with this, technically, Krishna's teaching is over. But as we shall see in the next slide, in the next verses, in verses 12 to 18, which will be covered in this session, Arjuna asks a question, that is Arjuna Prashnaha, where he wants further elaborations. And Krishna will reply to this from verse 19. So what is Arjuna's question? So he raises the question based on what Krishna has already said before, that everything was his glory, his vibhuti. But Arjuna says, do not give me a general statement that everything is yours. I want a list of all your glories, because I want to know more about your Ishvara Vibhuti. Next slide, please. So in verses 12 and 13, we have Arjuna's Namakam, or praise of the Lord. Since Arjuna wants a list or enumeration of the Lord's glories, he feels that he should first please Krishna by glorifying him. And that is called the Rudram or Namakam, where he glorifies Krishna using beautiful words. He says, you are the supreme Brahman, the supreme abode. You are supremely holy. You are the indweller in all. You are the all-pervading one. You are the eternal consciousness, the self-effulgent, the birthless, causeless cause of everything. He goes on to say all the sages, including the divine sages, Narada, Sita Devala, as well as Vyasa, they speak of you as the self of all, eternal, divine, the primary God, birthless and all-pervasive. And you are also telling me the same thing. Next slide, please. So just to repeat these very important, beautiful words, Param Brahma, he says you are that, supreme Brahman. Param Dhama, the supreme abode. Paramam Pavitram, supremely holy. Purusham, the indweller in all. Vibhum, the all-pervading one. Shashvatam, the eternal consciousness. Divyam, the self-effulgent. Ajam, the birthless. Adi Devam, the causeless cause of everything. Next slide, please. So the Namakam continues, and Arjuna goes on to say, O Krishna, I consider all that you have told me to be true, because neither the gods like Indra, Varuna, Agni, nor the demons and Asuras, neither of them know your manifestation, O Lord. And that is because of their own limitations. Only you can know this. Next slide, please. In verse 15, Arjuna cites a blend of Nirguna and Saguna virtues. And he says, O Krishna, the creator of all beings, the sustainer of all beings, the God of all gods, and the protector of the universe. You yourself alone know yourself by yourself. And Arjuna here uses another string of praises for the Lord. He says, Bhuta Bhavana, the creator of all beings, Shrishti Karta. You are Bhuta Isha, the sustainer, which is Sthiti Karta. Deva Deva, the controller. Jagatpati, the protector of the universe. Finally, Purushottama. Now, this is explained further in chapter 15, where the universe is divided into Kshara Purusha, which is manifest matter, Akshara Purusha, which is unmanifest energy, and Uttama Purusha. Now, if you reverse Uttama Purusha, we get Purushottama, which is Nirguna Brahma. Next slide, please. In verse 16, Arjuna asks the favor. So what is it that he wants to know? And that is the Chamakam. So he tells Krishna, you are the fittest person to narrate completely those divine glories by which you remain pervading these worlds. And he says, Vaktum Arhasi, you should teach me. And it is a humble commandment, Arhasi. So what should Krishna teach? Atma Vibhutayaha. So he says, all your glories, all your manifestations, you should teach. And what are these glories? Divyaha. Those are the extraordinary glories. Yabli Vibhuti Bihi, by which glory, Iman Lokan Vyapya Tvam Tishtati, you pervade the whole creation. Next slide, please. So in verse 17, Arjuna states why he's asking. And he says, O Lord of all powers, constantly thinking of you, how can I know your true nature, which is Arupa Ishvara? In what all objects are you to be meditated upon by me, O Lord? So Arjuna wants to know the specific glories that he can use as symbols or alambanas to meditate upon the Lord, so that by always visualizing the Vishwarupa Ishvara through these symbols, he will come to know Krishna's higher nature, which is Arupa Ishvara or Nirguna Brahman. The symbol can be a cow or a horse. The horse as in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and these are Pratima Alambanams. When a Saligrama or a Linga or a flame is used as an Alambanam, it is called Pratika Alambanam. Next slide, please. In verse 18, Arjuna says, O Krishna, tell me again about your potential power, which is yoga, and manifestation, which is Vibhuti, in detail, Vistarena, because there is satisfaction for me in listening to the nectar of your words. Next slide, please. Yoga here is the Maya potential, which has to be inferred, Anumeyam, and it refers to the omniscience and omnipotence of the Lord. Vibhutim is when that potential is expressed or visible, and it is perceived, Pratyaksham, and it is the capacity by which the Lord manifests as the manifold universe. Next slide, please. Arjuna wants to hear again, Bhuya Kathaya, because he never gets tired of this topic. And he says, Triptir hi nasti me. Arjuna wants to hear Amritam. He says, Amritam Shrunuvata. Yet Krishna had already described some of his vibhutis earlier. In chapter 7, verse 8, he had said, Prasoham apsu kaunteya prabhasmi shashi suryo pranava sarva vedishu shabda ke paurusham rishu. He had said, Arjuna, I am the taste in water, I am the radiance in the moon and sun, I am the Omkara in all the Vedas, I am the sound in space, I am the manliness in men. In chapter 9, verse 16, he has said, Aham kraturaham yajnaha, swadaham aham aushadam, mantro aham evajyam, aham agnir aham hutam. So he had said, I alone am the ritual prescribed by the Shruti, I am the ritual prescribed by the Smriti, I am the food offered to the ancestors, I am the food of all living beings, I am the mantra, I am the fire, I am the oblation, and I am the action of offering. So all glorious words he's used to describe himself. Next slide, please. Subsequently, which we will study in the next class, Krishna grants Arjuna the favor and starts to narrate his divine glories. Next slide, please. So we now move on and we change tracks and we go on to the Bhakti Yoga part of the Tattva Bodha, which deals with the principle of God. Next slide, please. So here in the scriptures, as we have learned from Swami Paramarthananda, the word bhakti is used in two different meanings. One is bhakti is devotion which is directed towards a higher principle, which is sacred. So that is a kind of reverential love. This can be a general love towards parents or guru or towards the nation, or it is a love of God, which is love of Ishvara. So the scriptures point out that all forms of general love of human beings are directed always towards three things only. The love towards various ends or goals, and that is of a medium order, that is madhyama. But because only through means are ends accomplished, we begin to love the means also. And that is the lowest form, and that is the manda. The love of oneself, which is self-love, is the highest form of love, and that is uttama. And there is a gradation in the intensity of love. So why is this? Again, we know love of means is only for the sake of the end, and once the end is accomplished, one no longer may love the means. So every end is loved for its own sake, for one's own sake. So when we apply this in the field of God, if a person loves God, what is the intensity of love? And this depends on how we look upon God. Most people, many of us, see God as a means for various worldly ends. So the intensity of love is manda bhakti. The next set of more mature people, they look upon God as the end or the goal of life, knowing that he represents peace, security, and happiness. So that there the intensity of love is madhyama bhakti. But the most intense, uttama bhakti, is when I look upon God as not different from myself. Soham asmi. Next slide, please. So the second way that bhakti is used in the scriptures is as a course of discipline, when it's called bhakti yoga, and that is meant to accomplish the highest goal of life, which is moksha. So bhakti yoga is a combination of karma yoga, upasana yoga, and jnana yoga. Bhakti yoga is a common name for all three because bhakti is the common atmosphere in which all these are practiced, as our Swami Paramarthananda tells us. So all the three, karma, upasana, and jnana, they should be totally soaked or imbued. They should float in the syrup of bhakti. That is how important bhakti is. Karma yoga should be done with the feeling of Ishvara Arpana Bhava, where we dedicate all karma to the Lord, and received in the form of Ishvara Prasada Buddhi. Everything is your grace, your blessing. Upasana yoga, I meditate upon the Lord only because of bhakti. In Jnana yoga, I pray at the beginning, I pray at the end. So that is how important bhakti is. Self-realization of Jnana yoga is the discovery of God. And all the three yogas put together are bhakti yoga. Next slide, please. One more topic when we deal with devotion or love of God that we have to know is the principle of God. We need to know that because an integral part of love is the object of love, I must know what this thing is. How can I love an unknown thing or person? So Jnanam of God becomes necessary. So the scriptures give three definitions of God depending on the maturity of the seeker. For the beginner, God is the creator of the universe. Jagat Karta Ishvara. So we then normally visualize God as a person and we choose the one which we like, the form we like. It could be Rama, Krishna, Ganesha. So this is Eka Rupa Ishvara, where God creates the world. The more mature student will then think, if God is the creator, what is the raw material that he uses? So the scriptures tell us that God himself was the very material that shaped the world, so that God himself becomes the universe. So God is the cause of the universe, Jagat Karanam Ishvara. So then we can't ask the question, where is God? Because everything around us is God. The whole universe is God. And he can take any form, Aneka or Vishwarupa Ishvara. And for darshan, he is available everywhere. So God becomes the world to the more mature student. Next slide, please. To the most evolved person, when we are ready spiritually, the scriptures then give us the highest definition of God. Jagat Adhishtanam Ishvara. So here we have to realize a subtle change that God did not become, but he appears as a world with different forms. He is the substratum of all the forms which he transcends. And because he transcends them, the forms do not belong to him. And therefore, God is Arupa Ishvara, or formless. And this is God appears as a world. So we have to understand all these levels gradually, is what our Swamiji tells us. Initially, I have Eka Rupa Bhaktihi. Later, I will have Aneka Rupa Bhaktihi. And last, when I'm ready, I will have Arupa Bhaktihi. And it is important to know that when one has Arupa Bhaktihi, it doesn't mean he doesn't enjoy Aneka Rupa Bhakti or Eka Rupa Bhakti. He can still enjoy all the various forms of the Lord. He can continue to pray to one particular God. It is just that there is a higher dimension that he has achieved. And he's aware that despite Arupa, I can appreciate everything else. So the Advaitin can appreciate God and still transcend to arrive as Arupa. And another way is that one form of physics does not displace the previous form. Next slide, please. So to summarize, 9 forms of bhakti have been presented in the scriptures. One is Manda, Madhyama, and Uttama Bhakti, where bhakti is the love of God. And this is Bhavana, Drishtya, Bhakti Trayam. The second set of 3 is Karma Yoga, Rupa Bhakti, Upasana Yoga, Rupa Bhakti, Jnana Yoga, Rupa Bhakti, which is Sadhana, Drishtya, Bhakti Trayam. Eka Rupa Bhakti, Aneka Rupa Bhakti, Arupa Bhakti depends on my understanding, and this is Devata, Drishtya, Bhakti Trayam. So the word Bhakti is used with differing connotations in different scriptures, so we should know the context. So to recap what we have studied, in the next slide, the Jagat Karanam status of the Lord itself is explained in the scriptures in 3 different ways, depending upon the intellectual level of the student. Jagat Karanam explanation number 1 is Nimitta Karanam Ishvara, where God creates the world. Jagat Karanam explanation level number 2 is Parinami Upadana Karanam Ishvara, where God becomes the world. The third level is Vivarta Upadana Karanam Ishvara, where God appears as a world. And the explanation will depend upon the intellectual caliber of the student or listener. So we come to the end of the topic for today. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rekha, for giving us a wonderful overview of Bhakti. And also these verses where Arjuna wants to know about God so that he's able to see God in the world. And through all these exercises, you will know that the greatest sadhana, if you want to know God, if you want to be God, is to become a bhakta. Move from initially Eka Rupa and now to Vishwarupa Ishvara Bhakti. As it's our tradition to see how we have understood, we will have a teaching quiz. And the teaching quiz will be conducted by Vasumati. Dr. Vasumati, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to the teaching quiz pertaining to the verses 12 to 18 of Bhagavad Gita and the Tattva Bodha topic covered in today's session. I request Srimati Meenakshi to unmute and participate in the quiz. The first verse number 12. Arjuna Uvacha Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adideva Majam Vibhum. Choose the right answer. Why does Arjuna refer to the Lord as the holiest of the holy?
Yeah, if I may read the options. is anything else becomes holy only because of the association with the Lord. Everything else has got borrowed holiness. Only Ishvara has got intrinsic holiness. So I think, Madam, all of the above.
Very good. Yeah, it involves all the three aspects. Next verse, 13. Ahustvam rishayah sarve devashi naradastata asito devalo vyasaha swayam chaiva pravishime. What does Arjuna say about the source of knowing these glories of Lord as we described in the previous verse number 12?
Yeah, the words in green is Rushayaha and Swayam cha eva bravishi. So this is Rushayaha is Rishis. So I think Arjuna hears this from Rishis and also from Sri Krishna himself. Here, Krishna himself has declared it.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, Arjuna says he knows this from the scriptures which have been given by the rishis, and Krishna himself had declared in the earlier chapters about his glories. Coming to the next question, verse number 14. Sarvametadrutam manye yanmam vadasi keshava nahi te bhagavan vyaktim vidurdeva na danavaha. Choose the right answer. Why does Arjuna say that he accepts all the glories of the Lord as truth?
Yeah, the options are: the Devas do not know Lord's manifestation, the demons do not know Lord's manifestation. He has full Shraddha in Lord's words. I think all of the above, Madam.
Yeah, that's the right answer, because here in the verse he says the devas do not know, the demons do not know, and I have full faith in your words. Yeah, moving on to the next verse, verse number 15. Swayameva atmana atmanam vetatvam purushottama bhuta bhavana bhutesha devadeva jagatpate. What is the highest glory that Arjuna ascribes to the Lord in this verse?
Yeah, it is the word is Swayameva Atmanam Atmanam. So I think it is you alone know yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You alone know yourself by yourself completely. This is the highest attributable glory of the Lord. Moving on to the next question, verse number 16. Vaktum ahasi asheshena divya hi atma vibhutayah yabir vibhutibhi lokan imam stvam vyapya tishtasi. What type of glory is Arjuna referring to in this verse?
So the words in the highlighted words are Divya, Vibhutayah, and Vapya Tishtasi. So Divya means it is divine. So divine glories of the Lord, through which the Lord pervades the universe.
Exactly. Extraordinary or divine glories, that is Divya Vibhuti, through which the Lord pervades the whole creation. Next verse number 17. Katam vidyamaham yogistvam sada parichintayan keshu keshu chabhaveshu chintayosi bhagavan maya. Choose the right answer. Why does Arjuna want to know the extraordinary glories of the Lord? What does he say here?
Yeah, the options to constantly think of the Lord, to know Lord's true higher nature, to meditate upon. I think it's all of them.
Yeah, very good. Moving on to the next question, verse number 18. Vistarena atmano yogam vibhutim cha janardana bhuyah kataya truptirhi shunvato nasti me amritam. Choose the right option here. What do we understand by yoga and vibhuti in this verse, in the context of this verse? Can you read the options?
Yeah, sure. Yoga here is Maya potential and Vibhuti is when the potential and that potential is expressed. Yoga is to be inferred, Anumeyam, while Vibhuti is to be perceived, Pratyaksham. Yoga is referring to the all-knowing and all-powerful aspect of the Lord, and Vibhuti is the Lord manifesting as the manifold universe. Okay, I think, sorry, I think I'm a little confused. Can I pass this?
Yeah. Actually, this Dr. Rekha also made a mention of this. We generally understand yoga and vibhuti in a yoga vibhuti and maya in a particular context. And here Swami Paramarthananda ji brings in this distinction about how we read yoga and vibhuti in the context of this particular verse. And he says yoga and describes what is the difference between the yoga and the vibhuti in this, and all of the three aspects written here applies in this context. Okay, moving on. This is the last of the Bhagavad Gita verses. We'll move on to the next question with Tattva topic. The first question here is, say true or false. Without understanding the principle of God, we cannot develop devotion or love towards God.
Yes, that's true, madam. True.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. Because integral part of love is the object of love. One cannot talk of God without knowledge or understanding, and that is why gnanam about God becomes a necessity. Today, in today's topic, it was discussed what is God, who is the object of one's love. Scriptures give three different definitions for God, depending on the maturity of the seeker and the intellectual caliber. Moving on to the next question in this context. What is the first definition of God for the beginner, and what does it mean?
It is Jagat Karta. Ishvara is he's the creator. So Jagat Karta Ishvara.
Very good. Exactly. Jagat Karta Ishvara means God is the creator of the world. Next question. Choose the right answer. Lord as the creator is a personal God with a special form, and we call this God, what do we call this God? Ekarupa Ishvara, Anekarupa Ishvara, Vishwarupa, or all of the above?
It's Ekarupa Ishvara.
Exactly. Moving on to the next question. Choose the right answer. If I understand God as the creator of the whole universe, it signifies what cause? Is it nimitta karana, upadana karana, mithya karana, or abhinna karana?
It is nimitta karana.
Yeah, that's the intelligent cause. Yeah. Moving on to the next question. After introducing Ishvara as the creator for the beginner intellect, and once there is sufficient maturity capable of thinking further, the scriptures present the next level of Ishvara. What is that, and what does that mean?
It means God is the cause. That is Jagat Karanam Ishvara. Just now we heard Dr. Rekha speaking about it. So
yeah, good. That's Jagat Karanam Ishvara. God is the cause of the world. Next question. Moving on to choose the right answer. With Jagat Karanam Ishvara, God is considered as is it Ekarupa or Anekarupa Vishwarupa or Arupa, or does it include all of the above?
it is Vishwarupa.
Yeah, very good. Moving on to the next question. First, I say God created the world. Then I say God has become the world. Once you're ready for the next level, then the scriptures give the third definition. What is the third one, and what does that mean?
It is Jagat Adhisthana Ishvara. It's substratum, That's what I would gather.
Yeah, thank you. Jagat Adhisthana Ishvara. Here, God does not create the world. God does not become the world, but God appears as the world with different forms, but not affected by any form in which he appears. That's what we call it as God is the very substratum of all the forms which he transcends. This is the highest and toughest, and this is the culmination. Moving on to the next question. Choose the right answer. In Jagat Adhisthana Ishvara, God transcends all the superficial forms of creation. No particular form belongs to God. And therefore, that God, as Adhisthana Ishvara, is either personal God, formless God, universal God, or compassionate God.
Formless God.
Yeah, that's the obvious answer. Thank you so much. And the last question for the session, say true or false. The one who has come to Arupa Bhakti has not lost Ekarupa and Anekarupa Bhakti.
Yes, true, madam. True.
Yeah, very good. Because Arupa Bhakti includes the other two. As the Bhakta gradually moves up the ladder from Ekarupa to Vishwarupa to Arupa, the latter one does not displace the former one. It is only a different dimension wherein the Bhakta becomes sensitive in these dimensions. Thank you very much, Meenakshi. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
you very much, Vasumati madam, for a wonderful quiz. Thank you, Dr. Rekha ma'am, for a very informative and educational session. And Dr. Hegde sir for your enlightening words, presenting all the important aspects of Vedanta in a nutshell. I, for one, can vouch that these concepts have become very clear for me in my mind, and we hope it has become for you too. Thank you very much for your active participation. Let us log in for our verse by verse Bhagavad Gita session number 136 on 24th February 2023 to continue our study of the 18th chapter. Please log in at 6:45 p.m. on Friday. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.